wonder, do Splyce just...
Qiyana.
That's the choice. They had to choose between Qiyana or the Kaisa. You have to assume that that one goes over to Unicorns of Love.
The Qiyana was banned against Splyce in every single game they've played so far at Worlds. And it's because it's such a strong pick in the current meta, but also Splyce can flex around. We've seen Humanoid play it mid, we've seen Xerxe play it in the jungle. I personally am expecting to see Xerxe be the one to pilot it this time around, but it is just so potent in either of those two players' hands.
And just also just potent in general. Just a hilariously powerful champion is the Qiyana. And Ender, I'm honestly surprised at the first rotation coming in here from the side of UOL. Thresh, yes, a good champion in both the hands of Norskeren and Edward, but not something I'd consider a priority pick. Every jungler is up, Gragas included, and they go for the Skarner instead. And now Splyce get to respond with their choice of blind pick on the top side in the Kennen, as well as the Nautilus.
Yeah, so Unicorns will have, they're going for the Skarner plus Thresh combo, where you impale someone, you make them unable to escape, and then you click on the lantern to drag them back hilarious distances right here. Still, I can't help but feel like there were potentially better options, as Xayah has slid through, or rather, Kaisa has slid through completely, and would be a solid pair with either of these two bottom lanes, so I'm expecting to see Splyce be the ones to ban that one away.
Of course, Unicorns will have luxury of first pick in the second phase, so Splyce don't want to see the Kaisa again. And I should think that they shouldn't. We'll have to ban it away here, but of course, a lot of options still up and available. Technically, the Aatrox a flex pick. We know it's a comfort pick for Boss, so very likely going to go in his hands, but could always be moved somewhere else.
I think he's trying to run this into the Kennen, not because necessarily the early lane phase is going to be a walk in the park, because of course you assume Kennen with the push advantage is going to be able to bully the Aatrox pretty hard in those early levels, but Aatrox will provide pretty solid gank assist for something like the Skarner, especially post level 6. There are options for them to try and punish an overextended Kennen in the top side of the map, and that's something we have seen a little bit from Vizicsacsi throughout the tournament, is his tendency to fall to early game ganks.
Absolutely is. Have to see if this is a lane where Boss can build up a huge advantage. He was put under a ton of pressure in the previous game. Maybe this time on his Aatrox, on that comfort pick, obviously has the luxury to pick it into the Kennen. Can be a bit more comfortable, but double LeBlanc ban as well as the Sivir ban from the side of UOL, not wanting to give Splyce a late game scaling option.
So I think the LeBlanc ban is very smart here from UOL. They're probably going to be last picking mid lane for Nomanz, because what we've seen from Splyce, both times they actually played on blue side in the group stage, was they went for this blind pick LeBlanc when the other mid laner was not shown just yet, and I think that was definitely something that Humanoid would have loved to get his hands on. I think another blind pick option for him would be the Corki that we saw him play a whole lot of during the LEC split. That won't happen, of course, if UOL just deny that pick, though.
Definitely an option. Something that Nomanz is comfortable on. Once again, this guy's MO is scaling picks. He plays them so incredibly well, and Corki, while he can pack a punch in the mid game, also a fantastic late game option. Splyce really need to think about what they want to do here. Do they put the Qiyana mid lane? Probably not ideal, but can also flex it into the jungle.
I think it has to be the Kaisa here for Kobbe. I really want to see him on that champion. The Cassiopeia was something I was going to talk about as well, because Splyce have been banning that super frequently. Definitely a champion they think is very strong in the current meta. And with her Q, she actually outranges Corki most of the time. So she's able to get that big movement speed bonus and then chase him down to, you know, whack ease into his back while he's trying to run away and not able to make use of the Gatling gun himself. So I think that is a pretty solid mid lane matchup for them. And of course, right next to it is going to be the Kaisa Nautilus bottom lane. A classic Splyce bot lane where Norskeren is on something that can find these engages, and Kobbe has that consistent team fight DPS that we love to see.
And Ender, these are two completely different compositions from what we saw in game one. You have to feel like it must be comfort for the side of UOL. Ashe, not necessarily something I'd associate with Innaxe, but the Corki alongside the Thresh for Edward. I mean, the Thresh Prince himself. Been a long time since he held that title. But Skarner coming in as well. But on the opposite side, Qiyana, one of the strongest champions in the game. Kaisa Nautilus, one of the strongest bottom lanes. I feel like in terms of perceived power, Splyce have come out miles ahead.
I definitely agree here. They have, you know, the physical damage of Qiyana coming out of the jungle, all the AoE stack for teamfight upfront burst damage, and then the consistent DPS of the Cassiopeia and the Kaisa. I think it is a much easier composition for the side of Splyce to try and execute. But at the same time, I think the Unicorns of Love have a lot of very strong pick tools with the Thresh, the Ashe, the Skarner. So if they are able to get into maybe a bit of a scrappier game where they're the ones finding the fights, when they're the ones with vision control over the river, there are tools for Unicorns. Just find that quick pick and then look for the 5v4.
And it just feels like the roles have reversed. Last game it was Splyce looking to get a bit of a lead, looking to find those picks, and now on the opposite side, Unicorns of Love looking to do the same as we move into game two. Two very different compositions. The Qiyana back in the hands of Xerxe after after he busted that one out in the jungle a few times in the LEC. No one ever really let him have it again, for good reason. But maybe UOL could be the team to make the difference, to show that pick is not all it appears to be. 1-0 up in the series so far. 2-0 would take them to match point. Can Splyce bring it back? Can they tie us up at 1-1? That is the question, ladies and gentlemen, as we move into Game 2 of the final series of the World's 2019 play-ins.
This game is certainly going to be having a different feel from match number 1 here. A lot because of how these teams are going to be active in the early game. I don't think Splyce needs to be so proactive as they had to be next time, or as last game necessarily, but both sides, mid lane and bottom lane, huge carry threats, and I think that mid lane or mid game team fighting is where a lot of the results from this game are going to boil down to.
There you go. Splyce fans now fighting back against the UOL fans. There's 2 games, ladies and gentlemen. There's the game you can see on your screen, and there's the game the audience is playing right now, which is who can cheer louder. And in both cases, Unicorns is winning.
That's nothing new, though. We always knew Unicorns of Love had such a dedicated fan base for so many years, ever since they sort of burst onto the scene a few years ago.
Burst is an appropriate word.
Burst is an appropriate word. We all remember that IEM, right?
It's true.
Rolling straight on in, pulling out Twisted Fate in the jungle, Poppy in the top lane before it was cool.
And I feel like UOL, as a team, as an identity, as a brand, as an org, just feel very at home in the LCL and the CIS, where we've already seen crazy picks, crazy plays, big explosive team fights. Seem to fit right in as an organization.
And the Unicorns striking first against their former players of Xerxe and Vizicsacsi. I would like to look a little bit at the top lane in this early game, though, because a lot of time when we do see Kennen in the top lane, he's going to be rocking the Kleptomancy. Instead, it's going to be Phase Rush this time around. There's a much more defensive option, looking for team fights, and I say defensive in the sense that with Phase Rush, it's really hard to actually get ganked because you can pretty much instantly pop that and get away from any melee diver, and the only time Kennen is going to struggle in laning phase is either when he's getting ganked or when a fighter against him is able to jump on top of him. So Vizicsacsi won't be able to build up as big a lead in lane as he would be able to with something like the Kleptomancy, but Phase Rush will keep him safe, and then of course be the superior team fighting rune later on, so he can access the low mobility backline of Innaxe.
Very low mobility on the Ashe. Of course, Thresh will balance that out to a certain degree. Have to see what Edward can get done with this pick this time around. No longer on the Morgana, no longer has quite as many defensive options to stop the engage. But I think to the surprise of no one, Ashe Thresh holding onto the push for now, winning the race to level 2 as the volley is just so oppressive to deal with early on. But Xerxe, rather the AHaHaCiK, has already backed, clears 3 camps, goes back, gets early boots for the Predator. This might not be the farm and wait to 6 Skarner that we are so used to seeing. Maybe looking for some early action on the bottom side. Yeah,
this is a pretty standard path for Skarner players to do, or any Predator junglers, to just go for that quick reset. And the question is for me now, like, you could either look for that fast bot lane gank, which I don't think is going to happen based on the lane positioning, but instead, if he clears back towards the top side of the map, Vizicsacsi is pushing, is going to be overextended, and much like Xerxe was able to find that top lane gank in game number 1, I think AHaHaCiK does have the option to this time around. And that's why I think Splyce are doing such a good job of tracking AHaHaCiK in the early game. We already see both Chachi walk up and place a deep ward, now Humanoid put one on the Raptor camp too. So Splyce know pretty much exactly what the path is going to be from AHaHaCiK in this game, which is sort of the read we had coming into the series. Xerxe and Splyce being a team that love to track their opponents early on and make sure their playmaking is limited.
Good use of the pressure to try to find a play. The flash, the flay. Norskeren now potentially in trouble, tries to make it out of that one, but the CC is there. Norskeren now set to fall, and looks like he will get taken down. First blood to Innaxe.
I like the play coming from the Unicorns right there. Of course, flash play from Edward doesn't leave much room to react on Norskeren, even though we are considering some of the options AHaHaCiK had. Bot lane to get the flash and now deny Kobbe, a lane partner, for a minute. This is going to be a good play from them.
Xerxe walking up.
Oh, Xerxe
can go over the wall. I think just waiting for the Raptor spawn, though. We'll see Skarner coming.
Okay, I was thinking maybe he was looking for a Raptor camp respawn. If he thought AHaHaCiK had started on Raptors, then Raptors should be spawning around this point in the game if he thought he went Raptors Red Krugs. but instead not going to be able to find that, or a gank in the mid lane. We see this play one more time. The lane pushing out. So Norskeren and Kobbe wanted to walk onto the wave, and I think that's just a really good read from an AHaHaCiK and UOL's bottom lane right there. There's really nothing that Norskeren can do in that lane. Even after using the flash, the hook just instantly comes on through there and is able to punish. And now an AHaHaCiK can go back, clear all his camps, pathing down towards bottom side once again, and look to punish potentially Norskeren, who doesn't have that summoner spell.
Pretty clean setup, and you can see Innaxe immediately going for boots too. Will make it easier to weave in and out of trades. And when you have the 20% slow at early levels from Ashe, passive on that frost shot, it means it's pretty impossible to get away from her once she starts winning a trade. Xerxe now puts his attention on the bottom side of the map. Skarner, of course, clearing out the top. He just push in for a bit of vision, seeing that his bot lane can come help him first, as that wave is crashing under the tower for the side of Unicorns Love. Denying the blast cone as well will make this lane a little bit safer. Of course, vulnerable to ganks as Norskeren is flashless. The good news, Kobbe has kept his.
And now with the deep ward on that Gromp camp, should be able to spot an AHaHaCiK coming from a long way away, because that's what you need against the Predator Skarner, and especially against a Thresh alongside it. There's just such an ability to close the gap on you that if you have a ward just in river, it might not actually be enough to escape from that gank. Checking in on this middle lane, though, we do see Humanoid once again with a big CS lead over Nomanz in the mid lane. This is sort of what we expected with the Cassiopeia matchup. We talked about how Cassio outranges with Q, and if you can land Q, you win any trade you take up against the Corki. But on top of that as well, I think that Humanoid is just much better on little to no items at the start, right? He has very high base damages, as here we go.
Next, Edward now needs to run out. Has the Lantern, actually bringing someone in, though. Xerxe may just walk forward. The root does connect from a distance. Not going to get anything else in the back of that play. Heal forced out from Innaxe. Nothing else.
Humanoid also constantly looking for that move down bottom lane too. So this is something we have to keep in mind as both junglers look to put their eyes on the bottom lane because summoner spells have been spent. Mid lane priority is going to be absolutely key, especially for Splyce, who around the 8-minute mark will be fighting against the package timing of Nomanz. As here goes Xerxe.
Stepping for that petrifying gaze hit. I can't believe it. Xerxe there to clean it up. Just caught him on the edge of the eyes, out of the peripheral vision. That'll be the difference maker. Nomanz goes down.
Shouldn't have looked to Nomanz. That was a bad idea. Humanoid also going to get 160 gold off of this plate as well. I really like that read from Xerxe too. You know, of course, Humanoid is calling for that gank right there. Says, hey, Nomanz out of position. Just tried to put down a ward. We can make this happen. Try to deny even more. There you go.
Get it.
Xerxe waiting and can he make the turn?
Wants to turn around.
Not quite.
Right.
I think he had the input in, but was spotted.
He looked him
Humanoid.
straight in the eyes. That petrifying
Yeah.
gaze came out. He tried to turn around. It was too little too late. And now you can see Humanoid and Xerxe both comfortably ahead of the opposition. And the remaining members of UOL kind of trailing behind, resulting in about this 1,000 goal lead that you see now on your screen.
So this mid lane, the fact that Humanoid and Xerxe are leading in terms of gold and just also have very powerful skirmishing champions is going to continue to be a thorn in UOL's side, primarily because a lot of the playmaking you try to make on the map comes through mid lane first, and then you rotate bottom lane or into the top lane, especially once we get further into this game. And 2v2 is never going to favor UOL. So they have to turn that into like a 3v2 with a roam from Edward as well. That's why you see Edward immediately pathing out of base with mobility boots to say, hey, maybe we can make a gank happen. Humanoid doesn't have the ultimate, so at the very least we can buy you some pressure.
And it's doubly important, of course. Predator will come out, hold that thought. AHaHaCiK now stepping forward, no petrifying gaze available. They know this. Edward gonna try to run in, but they're gonna flash. They're gonna fully commit to this one. Pulled back. That's the combo you talked about. Takes the Lantern, drags Humanoid right back into mid.
They just used everything they needed to right there. We bring 3 members into the mid lane, make sure we have a numbers advantage after seeing Norskeren in bottom lane, and then combo that right on up. Very nicely done from them. And you see the fallout of this effect, the ripple, as well as Edward goes into the enemy jungle, places a relatively shallow control ward. Now the team gets to move onto this very early Mountain Drake with a double marksman setup as well. It's going to make potential Baron setup so crucial. And because Unicorn's composition revolves a lot around finding picks to start off fights, if you can have this Mountain Drake, if you can force the enemy to face check into the river when you have control around an objective like the Baron, that just gives you free initiations.
Does not give Unicorns a love the gold lead, but it is going to be a difference maker. You now see Nomanz with the Hex Drinker feeling more comfortable. Will be forced to back out here as he's out of mana, but that can be the difference. Let's move later to get UOL back in. Ashe now level 6, something we have to keep our eyes on. Arrow going in, Xerxe now pitching for a play. He's level 6 as well. Ultimate can come out. Where's the Wind Blast going to go? Supreme display of talent, not even going to be necessary, but Edward's going to flash out to safety. Kobbe now going to go in, but Innaxe is here. And just continue to dish out damage. Steps forward, good bit, but Humanoid's there to
Package
cover.
on the way, Drakos. Nomanz wants to get into this fight, but
He's
Innaxe, he
baiting.
might go too early.
Rest the team, the flash out. It feels like he needed to act that one out just a little bit better. Not going to win an Oscar for that. If he'd waited a bit longer, maybe he could have been the difference maker. But now they see the Corki with the package. Nomanz knows that going forward would probably be not a good idea.
So Norskeren did take over to level 6 within that fight, so Innaxe very likely just didn't realize what had happened. Still a mistake from him, as Nomanz going to try to get a little bit active on Humanoid. Little does he know Xerxe waiting around the corner. I was wondering what was the response going to be from an AHaHaCiK, because as the Rift Herald spawned, I thought he could have made that play, instead trying to deny the blue buff. But look at Splyce's response. Vizicsacsi coming down, Norskeren coming up. Edward is here to try and pull an AHaHaCiK away to safety.
Ulti's there, Lantern's there, pull him back, get him out. It's not gonna work, the CC, it's flawless, and AHaHaCiK can't even click the Lantern. A ward placed on top will stop it, and Nomanz caught out as well. Xerxe now fishing for the kill, unstoppable. The package will not take him to safety. The poison knocking him down. Unicorns of Love can't catch a break. Edward's next on the list, just trying to buy time for his teammate to escape. The double kill for Humanoid.
Splyce are just going to punish, and AHaHaCiK invades every single time. This team is way too good at knowing where the enemy jungler is on the map. And AHaHaCiK needs to rethink his approach into the game, especially on a pick like the Skarner. He thought maybe with Edward coming around after seeing members of Splyce on the bottom side that he could make the play happen, but the much safer call was actually maybe just to start up the Rift Herald. Instead, now he loses his life, and Splyce can secure the Herald for themselves too. 3 minutes, they can cash in on plates, maybe around the mid lane, just snowball Humanoid even further ahead.
And if there are two champions that I do not want to see snowballing on the enemy team, it is Cassio and it is Qiyana.
So something to look out here is that AHaHaCiK just gets chain CC'd. As the Lantern comes in, Kennen plus the Nautilus, a stun into a root there as well. The guy has no chance, and Xerxe misses the ultimate there, I think. Not quite able to knock him into the wall unless the grounding stopped him from moving. But the burn damage going to be enough coming through from Humanoid to find 2 kills on top of the 1 on an AHaHaCiK.
And the nice thing about that ult from Qiyana is that while technically it missed the intended target, the AoE around terrain is so large that it did hit a single member of UOL. So it can technically claim 100% accuracy thus far. If you want to track.
Yeah, we can pretend. We can pretend for these guys.
High skill.
Now down 3K gold, but we've seen Unicorns climb back from a deficit just a few minutes ago.
But they don't have the tools this time around, Ender, and that's what's concerning. Is last game we had a very clear, you get to 40 minutes, you win the game. And now, of course, you look at Splyce, and you can see that story unfold. Plus 3K, plus 4K, plus 1K. Huh, what happened there? That's a single fight turning against them, and a Baron secured by the side of UOL. So you're right, that it is explosive, but it's not the same comp.
Yeah, Unicorns do have tools, I would say. They have the Corki, they have the Ashe. That's late game damage if I've ever seen it. It's more that Splyce now have the ability to fight back with a couple key carries of their own. So even if this one were to be stalled out in the mid game after Splyce, you know, get this lead early on, I would still give them a fighting chance for sure.
And overall, I think I just like this Splyce composition more for the team. It has good scaling elements, it's got good team fighting elements. If it's ahead, Xerxe and Vizicsacsi push R, everybody dies. If it's behind, Xerxe and Vizicsacsi push R, and maybe they want to fight. Very similar. Funny that one.
I think one thing we're going to have to track as Humanoid takes a nice trade mid and Herald goes down, so maybe we'll hold that thought, because now all of Splyce getting involved around the mid lane, they're just first on the rotation. So an AHaHaCiK comes over with the Predator, has the flash coming up soon, but do they actually want to force this? I don't think so.
Oh, flashing in, trying to get the fight kicked off. Humanoid taking a ton of damage. Maybe that could be the difference. They pull him back. That's going to be 2 quick kills picked up by the side of Unicorns of Love. The Herald may have hit the tower, but Unicorns of Love hit Splyce right in the face.
Really surprising there is Splyce, you know, sort of caught in transition. Some people walking away towards top, some people standing up forward. And AHaHaCiK immediately is able to find the punish right there with the Predator plus flash. Maybe able to trade back some in the turret plate department as well as Rift Herald. Not going to be used to too great of an effect. That mid lane tower going to be very low for a future siege, but now problems continue as Vizicsacsi has 2 members of the Unicorns moving up towards his lane.
Boss stepping in. TP is there. Ultimate going to be forced out. Boss now needs to escape. Turret plating is just fallen, so they're not going to be able to grab any extra gold. He's now trying to finish the kill off. Humanoid's going to be in trouble. They're locked into the tower! Oh, man. Baited and outsmarted. Splyce thought they had the play. It does not work out.
They're still coming.
Vizicsacsi's in trouble. One more auto phase rush. Oh, and that's what you talked about earlier, Ender. You proc the phase rush, you walk away. It is that simple.
At the end of the day, still will be Splyce with the gold lead. 8 turret plates to the 1 of the Unicorns of Love, but this is where I feel like maybe the pressure getting to Splyce a little bit as they overcommit. You can see in this play, Vizicsacsi is running towards top lane. The rest of Splyce is backing up. Humanoid caught by himself in the front line as all of Unicorns are on the same page, and this is what we continue to see from them. All grouping up and getting ready to fight as Vizicsacsi tries to fight for a long time, and the play looks good at the start, right? With the TP coming on in here, but this is where Splyce can decide we can go ahead and back away. Instead, Humanoid stuck underneath the tower, nowhere to go. An AHaHaCiK right on the opposite side, and even the teleport too almost makes it a 2-for-0 in favor of the Unicorns.
Once that Kennen ult is down, he's just really not a threat. And for Boss, you know, you've got double magic damage threats, very easy to take magic resistance in the runes, but now you have a split profile as they collapse on him bot side. But if it's Cassio and Kennen trying to kill him, a single MR item is going to do so much work to just stop that from happening.
Absolutely, and Splyce going to have to be paying the QSS tax themselves. Humanoid now, just the Archangel staff and the QSS on top of it. On the other side, Nomanz also had to spend 1,300 gold to counteract the laning power of Cassiopeia, but you definitely have to keep these types of things in mind, especially when we enter a mid-game where Splyce, in theory, have a gold lead of about 1,300, but not a lot of power going to be coming through from that QSS.
What do you mean they have a gold lead in theory? It's a number on our
I mean, they have it in theory, but they spent that 1,300 to get themselves a QSS. So it's utility power, but in terms of stats, not going to be super valuable.
Boss chunked out there, but Humanoid, learning from the last play, will not stick around. In the meantime, Vizicsacsi breaks the tower. Theoretical gold lead extending to 1.8k.
In theory.
Huge alt stun. Gonna have to look at how that one happened. Burning, not dead yet, but AHaHaCiK on the way in. Watch that arrow, Xerxe. Ooh, dashes out. Taking their time on this one. They don't want to focus on Humanoid. They're just going to try to force the QSS. They're now backing off. Double TP used by the side of Splyce. Norskeren trying to fish for Nomanz. Nomanz can't go anywhere. The lockdown is there. Edward now running for the hills, and AHaHaCiK needs to make it out of safety. He's just going to try to fight. Now going to get pulled back. Grounded. Will just get picked off in the end. Disaster for the Unicorns of Love. Xerxe going for the chase down here. Moby's proc for Edward.
I don't think he can get out of this one, Drakos. There's not a lot of room, and as soon as he tanks the tower, he's going to get slowed down. Yeah, he's gone.
Deflate. The great. Is it possible? No, it's not. Qiyana's
really
too mobile. Audacity coming up.
He's got the shields.
Mobies?
No. Don't give him false hope, man. He's going down. He can just run for a long, long time. That fight was nuts. Everyone getting involved in the bottom lane. So many TPs trying to enter that fight. Hope you get a chance to look at it one more time. That's going to be it right here because, again, it starts off with Splyce jumping in and trying to immediately burst out Nomanz. He is able to survive, though, and that's when the 5 members of Unicorns come in on the way, but the arrow isn't quite able to connect. The damage isn't quite there because, remember, Nomanz is so low. Even though it's 5v2 in theory, Nomanz has no HP, so he really is not doing anything in this fight. Effectively gets solo killed by Norskeren there, and then Unicorns are completely routed. When they were the ones initially coming in on the flank and finding that collapse, it was actually them that were getting collapsed on because they had overextended themselves without the ability to chase down and do the damage to get kills.
And now Splyce are incredibly far ahead. Once again, 5k lead. And Nomanz has to dash right out of that one. And things are only going to get harder here. Once again, scaling. Very easy for Splyce to win a team fight. We just saw what happened. It took 2 TPs and everybody died. For the side of UOL, they got to clean up the execution, it feels like. You wonder if that Ashe era would have been better used after Skarner stunned someone.
Possibly. You can never miss it then. Here we go. Can't miss that.
Kobbe, though, that's exactly what they need. They're going to pull him back. Boss is here to do a bit more damage. Perfect pick and shut down in the mid lane from Unicorns of Love. That's what they're talking about.
Kobbe just not quick enough to react with a flash over the wall right there. Didn't necessarily know the rest of UOL was wrapping around on the side, and that's going to be much needed gold for the Unicorns.
Has to be careful here. Xerxe's waiting as well. They're fishing for the ultimate. Xerxe, watch him. Is he going to ult the wall? He can hit 3. He's going to grab 1. Dashes over. Huge damage coming in from this Qiyana. Keeping the fight going. Norskeren on the flank.
Humanoid coming around the corner here.
Coming too. They need to run down, and AHaHaCiK needs to run down. Edward has to flash out to safety. Blast Cone will take them away. Humanoid. Turn on him. No, they will back off. Splyce fans going wild, and rightfully so. 4k gold lead just about held now for Splyce, and Qiyana is monstering this game. Huge performance from Xerxe.
I really loved how Xerxe played in that fight as well. A lot of Qiyana players are going to commit into that too quickly, but instead he played with the range, spamming out those blades with the Q, and then only went in when he knew the fight was completely won. We'll actually see it from him as Norskeren and Vizicsacsi see that Unicorns actually have no real escape here. So Xerxe on the bottom corner of your screen here is just going to poke away with the Q, not actually commit to the fight, wait until Unicorns have no real threat in that fight left. And because Nomanz is top lane, as soon as Innaxe went down, there's just no DPS coming through from this team. Yeah, Boss will be able to do some, but he can't do it while also running away.
How many? Singe. Singe is the only champion who could do DPS while running away.
I mean, AD carries can kite as they walk backwards.
I think that's technically stop. Okay, we're not going to get into the nitty-gritty.
Don't argue with me on this.
They technically stop, turn around, auto attack, and then walk. Ender.
Technically.
Theoretically. Theoretically. Speaking of theoretically, gold lead. Now 4.5k. You will, of course, have the mountain. They have the ocean. The next Drake spawning will be an ocean as well. So not ideal for them if they want to contest. You mentioned earlier, double 80 carries. Very good at shredding through the Baron, especially when one has a Blade of the Rune King. That said, opposite team.
Also very good at shredding through the Baron.
Incredibly good. Yes, a Cassio, basically an 80 carry when it comes to theoretical damage output. It's Kobbe, of course, probably the best in class 80 carry for shredding Barons next to Callista and that fake smite secure.
Yeah, and we should be seeing the Rylays, or rather the Leandries, come out next from Humanoid, next to the Rylays. He has the Crystal Scepter now, which is going to give him that slow and just be able to chase down targets even more. As well as just, you know, when Skarner's trying to chase you down, that's one of the primary initiation tools from UOL. Not going to be able to do it quite as easily here. As the siege setup is going to be nasty from Splyce, and Unicorns, what can they actually do? Because they have to play around the big cooldown window of Ashe Arrow whenever they find an engage. Skarner isn't going to be the one to just try and flash into an initiation. A lot of the times, he has to play around that cooldown so well, because that's a 5-minute window when he has that flash up. And yes, well, often that's an instant kill. As soon as more QSSs come through and Splyce play better around that window, it's going to be much harder to make happen.
Closing the game is kind of now the name of the game for Splyce. Of course, they have a sizable lead. They're breaking down tier 2s pretty easily, all things considered. The Cassio and the Kennen doing a lot of damage to towers with just the amount of flat AP they're packing.
So when you look at these team fights coming through from Splyce, because we expect them to fight in the next five or so minutes, try to pick themselves up this Baron, I'm always going to be looking at Vizicsacsi and Xerxe. These are going to be the two guys that want to come in around on a flank. And they don't necessarily need to be the players to start the team fight. I think Norskeren, more often than not, will try to queue forward as hold that thought. Vizicsacsi really running.
Predator coming out.
Oh, it's a disaster. Here comes Xerxe on the side and the TP.
Nomanz is just going to get deleted. Goes back into the wall, dies anyway. Supreme display of talent, supreme display.
You can't run!
You can't do anything. That was the slaughter. We said, hey, Splyce are going to need to win a fight. That's the fight. They won it. Baron is now theirs. There's no jungler left.
And you know, Xerxe came around on the flank, so we'll say they did everything right there. Boss coming in with the TP, but it's 3 versus 5, and Splyce still have the spells to try and turn.
Humanoid has ult up. Arrow's gonna connect. Oh! For Humanoid, it's clean. The R flash, he's gonna connect it. They're gonna wipe the floor with him. Trying to turn. Boss does so much damage. Norskeren might die to the Baron. Has to back off. But that is a clean ace for Splyce. They just massacred the Unicorns of Love. That has to be the biggest explosion of gold I've seen in a long time. From like 3-4K to 8 in a single fight.
Those are the kinds of moves we were waiting to see from them in game 1. Seize these mid-game windows when you have the lead. And this is that moment. The TP call in means that Unicorns, they split up. And guess what? Xerxe coming over the wall stops Nomanz in his track. And then with that, Rylay's Crystal Scepter purchase second on Cassiopeia. Humanoid just able to train down an AHaHaCiK.
No,
and then just watch this, watch this.
Is it alt flash or is it flash alt?
It's our flash.
Oh.
Sick. The 3-man.
Cassio mechanics. And obviously Aatrox damage is big. If he had landed 2 or 3 more of those, he may have instantly won the fight, but it just doesn't happen. And now, you know, last time Unicorns a little bit this far behind, I said the game was over, but this time it really does feel like the game's over. Vizicsacsi gets hooked, but not going to get caught out quite yet. Waterblade will not land. 5 strong here from UOL on the top side of the map. Boss now moving up to help cover.
It's really interesting because last game, you know, Splyce, they were splitting the map playing 1-3-1. Now it's very much about just parking Humanoid in the top lane, having Vizicsacsi group up with the team because right now he's going to be much more effective in a 5v5 and there's no one that can match Humanoid in the 1 versus 1. So they can just play all throughout this topside jungle, use the next 2 minutes of the Baron to knock down towers. And honestly, the wave clear tools from Unicorns of Love not going to be super powerful. So TP comes in just to reset Chachi onto the map. Maybe they find a dive. But ultimately, it's just the tower.
Or should have flash out shortly. Looks like a few seconds off cooldown there, so we'll come back up. And I'm going to be honest, Andrew, the list of champions that can beat every champion on UOL in a 1v1 right now is alarmingly high. It's 2. It's Xerxe and Humanoid. And they're going to get more and more scary.
I think it's also Vizicsacsi and probably Kobbe, too.
To be fair,
Norskeren is the only guy
strong.
that would lose the 1v.
Yeah, not yet. You haven't seen his patented Wits End Nautilus build. It's not a thing. He doesn't do that. But I kind of hope he does. But honestly, at this point, very confident from Splyce, clearly learning from their mistakes in the previous game, built a completely different composition, still strong in the early game, scales way better. It's paying off for them here in Game 2.
The only thing they have to look out for is the Ashe arrow initiation when they are rotating between these 2 lanes. You know, if Kobbe sticks in the mid lane a little bit longer than he should be, but otherwise, should be very happy. Need to look out here, though. Think Unicorns want to make the play.
Be careful, though.
Ooh.
The arrow sounds nice. The Skarner ult sounds nice, but they don't have really any burst damage outside of the Aatrox, which is pretty unreliable because Ashe and Corki just aren't there yet.
Also, the problem is, even though Humanoid is standing so far forward without anyone in front of him, like a madman, he's got cleanse up, you know, with that Quicksilver Sash, so the Ashe arrow also on cooldown. Would not go to much use there.
Very often when you see a Kennen in the game, it comes down to, can you burn his ult before a relevant teamfight happens? And now it's, can you burn Kennen's ult and Qiyana's ult and Cassio's ult before a teamfight happens? And I just don't think Unicorns will have the tools. There's, no matter how good you are as a player, I just don't think that there's much you can do to come back against this composition when it's this far ahead.
The best thing for UOL right now is that Baron is timing out, and I don't think they're going to lose any inhibitors off of this one. They were taken low as Norskeren continues to fish with hooks that I think might end in disaster for Splyce, but if they can break it on this wave, it will be the moment.
Walking forward, tanking the tower for the creep wave. Arrow will connect. Norskeren has to flash out to safety. Has the QSS for himself, though. They are just moving in. They're pressing forward on this siege. Might just back off on that one.
I mean, top lane tower went down as well, so this Baron actually being used fantastically here from Splyce. They don't have to end the siege, although Norskeren is running low on HP. So probably want to take him home for a reset in the near future. And then, hey, 2 minutes off that next Baron buff. And again, how do you ever face check into Splyce? Because if you do, there's a Cassiopeia there, there's Kennen looking to flank on you, a Nautilus too. The turn from Splyce is absolutely nasty, so the fact that they do have a lead already in this game makes it really, really hard for the Unicorns to walk on in and do anything against them.
And look, as we have this reset, as we start to gear up for the next Baron, a minute and 43 away, next Dragon's a Cloud, can't imagine that'll be a huge point of contention. I have to ask, because VODS was, I'm not going to say hard flaming, but very critical of Splyce in the previous game. So I kind of want to get your
And justfully so, right?
So is this, how much better is this game? Are you seeing everything you want to see from Splyce? Is this kind of the performance you were expecting from them upon entering the plans?
So I'm seeing a lot, but I still almost expect more in a sense because their mid-game issues were sort of rectified because Unicorns overextended massively in the top lane. They were able to punish, so I'm going to be looking for further in this series is how they are able to take the emphasis themselves, you know, to make it come off of their good play as opposed to reacting and punishing the side of Unicorns. Of course, though, in this game, doing all the steps they need to be able to close out relatively easily. For UOL and this Baron spawning, though, I do think they must fight against it, even down in items here. I'm looking at AHaHaCiK with the flash. He has to flash ult Xerxe or Chachi, get the combo with Thresh back, and find that pick. Otherwise, the 5v5 goes massively in Splyce's favor.
And I sincerely hope everyone can hear this right now. The battle between Splyce and Unicorns of Love fans is fantastic. And you called it the final gauntlet, the final arena that they may have to fight in is that Baron pit. But right now, Unicorns of Love can't even get out of their base to get the setup. You can see their control wards being used incredibly defensively. Nomanz happy to have a little bit of vision there. Maybe they can
Arrow?
Arrow connects onto Vizicsacsi. They need to chain all the CC flawlessly. If the Kennen gets all in the middle of the fight, they manage to take him down. But now Humanoid can watch it. Watch the Cassio. Can't you get the damage done? Boss is now taking out Norskeren. The rest of Unicorns of Love now pushing forward. Kobbe and Humanoid still alive. They can shred through Boss. But they're backing off. Vizicsacsi and Norskeren down at the price of no members on the sides of Unicorns.
It's exactly what they needed, and it's off the back of a beautiful arrow there from Innaxe. No QSS or Zhonya's onto the Kennen, so they absolutely find the window to punish Vizicsacsi on the rotation there. And that's at the same time the Baron spawns. So now you all have this window to try and get vision that they never should have been able to get, Drakos.
Corki now with an IE as well, in addition to the package. Nomanz, of course, can't step up too confidently, but as they get more items under their belt, these fights will get easier and easier for them. They can keep finding picks, keep killing some of those major teamfight ultimates before they get to be used. Now they set their sights on the Baron. Qiyana is right there.
There's
Qiyana
no
has
TP.
No ult, though. No TP for Vizicsacsi. Level 16 Kennen will not be a part of this fight if they keep going. They know this is their window. They know it's closing. They've hooked him. They've locked him down, but now Kobbe jumps to the backside. You know there's no threat remaining. Norskeren is there to back him up. They're taking out the jungler on the opposite side. It's a jungle for jungle trade, but Humanoid is going to be the difference maker. He's trying to plow through the entire team, but it is not enough. Boss says no. He drops the Darkened Blade right on his face, but Kobbe is unrelenting, and Vizicsacsi is here. Splyce will take the fight. It's a triple kill for Kobbe. He wants a quadra. He might just want the penta. Unicorns of Love, though, back off. They will not give it to him. Splyce once again in complete control. Innaxe just gets clicked down, and that's going to be it for the fight.
Splyce with an open base there, winning the team fight, and now can walk in for as many inhibitors as they can grab for themselves. It's Kobbe who comes up massively in that team fight after a beautiful turn with the Petrifying Gaze from Humanoid. And all their woes go away, Drakos, in the blink of an eye. It's one team fight to put them right back definitively on top.
Nearly 5k damage from the Kaisa. Ults into the more vulnerable members of the enemy team, not afraid to just wipe the floor with them. Well played. Credit to the whole Splyce team, of course, but Kobbe going to be happy to be the beneficiary
Here we go.
of the kills. And we said it was all going to come down to the Baron fight. Well, Splyce won that Baron fight. Innaxe is still dead, no arrow available. This should be a Baron side of Splyce.
Goodbye.
Edward caught out. Edward dead. And now, UOL will push forward anyway.
It's a 3v5. Innaxe is still in the base. He has to defend minions.
Vizicsacsi has no ult. They can try to finish this one. A perfect ult, though, coming in from Humanoid is going to be the difference maker. Instantly, the Qiyana goes in. Supreme display of talent, but Boss will strike back. The jungler is dead. Now Boss has to retreat. Can he turn this one? That's huge healing coming in. They do not have a Morellonomicon to limit this. Oh my! The Aatrox is big! The Aatrox is disgustingly large, but it does not matter. Boss still going to get cleared out as the Baron drops in the meantime. It looked good, but it is not enough to find the win. Vizicsacsi on a rampage.
Splyce may be looking for the end themselves. Kobbe teleports into the base, and they have the minions. Another TP to follow from Vizicsacsi. 31 minutes on the clock. Splyce are chasing on in and looking for the end.
More than 1 kill a minute. It's an absolute bloodbath. The QSS will stop the arrow, and Kobbe wants a little bit more. Fishing for it. Innaxe goes into the base. Gets knocked up, but will not be taken down. Can't save his aim for Edward as Splyce strike back in this best of 5 and even up the score.
Splyce felt robbed after game 1, Drakos, and they came back guns ablazing in game number 2. Much more clean of a mid-game. They're punishing some of the positioning of the Unicorns of Love and ultimately able to find that win off the back of some nice team fighting.
And really, I feel like just honestly outdrafted. I respect the adaptation coming in for the Unicorns of Love, but it doesn't really feel like they kept anything from the previous game that allowed them to win. And they also weakened a lot of the things that were good about the previous game for them. And don't get me wrong, Boss had a fantastic Aatrox performance. He looked huge in those fights. Splyce might consider building healing reduction in the future. But it was not enough, and the difference, AHaHaCiK, I think, was trying even harder in that game on a champion that's supposed to impact the early game. They got the Thresh Skarner combo, but they couldn't get anything done with it. And a wild, wild game. 1-1 overall, and of course the analyst desk is ready to break that one down. Take it away, Quick Shot.
Thank you very much, Drakos. We have a series on our hands.
Really?
As even it up at 1-2. I'm going to bring out the classics, dude.
The classic.
It's been long days. Look, let's dive into picks and bans immediately. Some big changes. First and foremost, Unicorns of Love, they had side selection. They chose red side. With Splyce on blue side, they managed to get Qiyana straight out the gates. And Fedius, what do you think of that?
So the biggest difference from this game compared to game 1 is that this time round, Splyce were actually able to get themselves not only winning solo lanes, but also champions that outscaled. And what surprised me was, you'll see here for the side of the Unicorns of Love, they locked in the Aatrox into the Kennen. And on patch 9.19, I feel like Aatrox, after the nerfs, less viable in the mid lane, which means you're almost guaranteeing a losing matchup top. And then by early rotating the Corki and saving their AD carry for last pick, you just give the freedom for Splyce to pick up their solo lanes and basically have 2 winning solo lanes once again.
And even on both sides of the coin, you look at this last pick, Ashe for UOL in game number 2, and being able to use it in the early game, being able to use it proactively, not to a great success. And then first game for Splyce on the other side. Like they did the same with Jhin, and you're like, oh, you're giving away your 4th pick Akali for that last rotate Jhin that it didn't eventually like win you the game. That's not like a wow pick. You definitely could have blinded that if you want, I think is interesting.
And what I also think is that UOL's comp didn't really align itself on what it wanted to do. It felt like that it had pick elements, it felt like that it had team fighting elements, it felt like that the different champions spiked at different points in the game, and it felt like that there was no real time where this comp kind of came online in its unison. And if it wasn't for their top laner having an honestly beast of a performance on Aatrox, finding multiple picks and kills, then this could have been a lot more one-sided in favor of Splyce.
Splyce, a lot more one-sided. Mistakes in the mid
Yeah.
Yeah.
Name a more iconic duo. No, but seriously though, Splyce, you know, they get off to another strong start. I think Xerxe multiple times throughout the World Championship has got several kills in a row in the early game and building up these leads for Splyce. But we were discussing and debating what happened next multiple times. We got a couple of replays that I would like my analysts to talk me through and sort of break them down one by one.
Yeah, I think this is really the big thing that kind of starts off what I will call the disconnect for Splyce. My time as a coach talking about disconnecting and reconnecting. Unfortunately, in League of Legends, mistakes snowball, right? So you stick around too long in the mid lane, immediately after dying to a flash Skarner ulti, Cassio goes back and buys a QSS, and then you get into this sort of reactive phase. You mentioned Xerxe in the early game has been proactive. It's because the way they're playing the game is like, okay, what do we want to do? Set up on a side lane. Who comes with me? Bring the support over. Get vision here and here. Set up a play. That is very planned. And now this is immediately after dying in the mid lane. You see in the side lane, like Vizicsacsi's like, oh, bummer, like I need some help. TPs are coming through to save you. And then it's a reactive play on the top side. And exactly the same can be said for this one here.
And you'll notice in a lot of these setups, again, the disconnect. There are 2 people in the bot lane forcing an all-in when the rest of Splyce is not in a position to answer. These teleports came in much later than they normally would because, again, the rest of Splyce weren't ready. Now, ultimately, they turn this heavily in their favor, which is great for Splyce. But the reason why they lost game 1 was because a lot of the plays that they tried to make did not have proper setup and they got punished for it. And we're continuing to see these plays happen again in game 2.
And that's the thing, right? Whether you judge a play on like bad, good, great, the fact is like reliable and unreliable are the things that win you games in best of 5. And this was their first win, but those plays are unreliable because they're being incredibly reactive in the mid lane.
Now, let's also give a little bit of praise here because both sides, despite being very critical, saying some of the elements of the Unicorns draft and then some of the decision-making, we're seeing some very exciting plays. We are seeing some scrappy team fights, let's not kid ourselves, but neither team is willing to just fall over and concede the game. Boss in particular in this Aatrox performance this game, Unicorns in the previous game, fantastic team fights. What sealed the deal this time around, though, was a Splyce Baron that was set up because Unicorns were looking for a pick and it didn't work out.
Yeah, 100%. This is the best example of an AHaHaCiK being the jungler that he is. Xerxe doesn't even know he's there.
So this replay significantly earlier.
Yeah.
There's a blue buff invade that then gets turned around.
But it is the jungler kind of just solo invading and then getting punished at the back end.
So this was one of the things where while we throw criticism towards Splyce in their ability to be a little more reliant on reacting to a lot of the plays, here we actually get to see them being the reactionary team where it's working out in their favor. And as we set up the Baron, I think it's important to recognize that while they are a lot more reactionary than I feel like we've often seen from them in the regular season, they're still talented players that are more than ready to make these plays happen and actually convert these teamfight wins into big objectives. We saw it in the bot lane play where they converted into 2 towers, and here UOL are just trying to get something back on the map. But this time, UOL are the ones not in position, and it's Splyce who are able to punish and convert into a big win.
And that's the thing, right? With TPs, the nuances are there. If you are reactive, you're not setting up a play on your own volition, you have to be swift, and that was exactly it. The package goes forward, the Skarner looks for the pick, TP comes immediately, and they clean up massive.
Now, we are nearly at the end of the segment, and we only have, so we have some information that Splyce have selected blue side going into game 3. Blue side has been very heavily sort of favored and victorious. Ejim, closing thoughts on Splyce picking blue and expectations coming into the game.
I was just kind of laughing, like, fancy that. What? There's been one red side victory the whole day. We get to game number 3.
One yesterday, one today.
Yeah.
What is it about the draft on blue side that's helping it be victorious?
Well, I mean, having priority pick, and I think that you're forced to ban away Pantheon on red side as well, which means that you don't have as much control over the direction of the draft, and having first pick gives you a lot more creative control as well.
All right, very closing thoughts.
Yes, I want to say that we don't have much time, but it's because people's counter picks aren't being useful. Like, straight up. The
That
counter
was
picks just aren't
awesome.
working.
I expected it to be longer, but you nailed it. Good job, team. We're stepping away when we return. It's game 3 of Unicorns of Love versus Splyce. Do not miss it, because I said